if I'm starting with the childhood, it probably goes back to like kindergarten. Like one of my first like core memories, I have this feeling of like noticing like, oh, I have a birthmark. Like other kids don't. And that's a thing. And sort of from that first memory of it was my thoughts spiraling of what I look like to other people. Like, what is this? Who am I in regards to this thing I have?
When I was young, I had convinced myself that this birthmark on my face would literally, I just couldn't be loved. I thought that wasn't possible. And that was a pipe dream for me, and that was never gonna come true. And then I got older, and I really wanted to meet my person. And it's like, if you're gonna meet your person, you have to be able to talk to everyone. And so I had to figure out how to work on my confidence and basically, I don't know, edit myself to what I thought was attractive and confident. But even now, when I love myself and I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I think I can't even recognize myself, I'm still running through the same challenges I know a lot of my peers are. There's the dating app world is difficult. And I always wondered if my lack of success there is because of my birthmark or not. And when you're getting stood up on a date, you tend to ask yourself the hard questions of, this was because of me, right? I definitely did something to mess this up.
Cyrano de Bergerac. He is a character who has become a symbol of unrequited love and the fear of rejection. Cyrano was known for his sharp wit, his mastery of words, and his bravery. But despite all of his strengths, he carried a deep insecurity: his nose.
So yeah, I've been video gaming pretty much since my dad introduced me to Halo 3 when I was young, on like original Xbox. And sometimes he'd like bring me into work, and his friends all knew how to play Halo, and I'd play with them like after they were, after hours, and I was playing with the older cool people. So that was the start, And then I got into shooters for a bit, and then I started realizing like I actually really like the strategy games. And it was like when I was like 14, I got really into Hearthstone, and I was like coming home from school, and I was like, I'm climbing the ranks. And then one day I was like, oh my God, if I took like a few days and I took this seriously, I could get like a really good rank. And so for like 3 or 4 months, I was top 200 NA, like holding the top 200 in Hearthstone. And I definitely played like I'm in some YouTube videos with some random people. But it just became a free time, and it's what I learned how to do. It's what I got good at. And especially when I was good at it, it was a lot more fun.
Cyrano believed that his appearance made him unlovable, that no one could see past this physical flaw to the man he truly was. This story is more than just a tale from literature. It resonates with so many people today who feel defined by their appearance, who think their unique features might overshadow their inner qualities. But what Cyrano didn't realize, and what many of us forget, is that true love, true connection, comes from seeing someone for who they truly are, beyond the surface. This tragedy of Cyrano's story isn't his nose, but his inability to believe that he was deserving of love just as he was.
It took a very long time to get myself in the headspace and to get myself mentally ready to do that work, to face that. And it was like my junior year of high school that like I finally cracked, and I was like, Mom, I need to see someone professional, otherwise something bad's gonna happen.
Dylan's dad, Doug, and I both started in animation back in the late 80s. We started at a company in San Diego called American Film Technologies. We met there. And then we both ended up moving to LA and working in animation. Once the kids were born, I quit my job and stayed home with them, and we moved out here to the suburbs. And then later on, he and I divorced, and I met my partner now, Eric, and he and I were a blended family. So he had 2 kids, I have 2 kids, same ages. And he also is very artistic. He's was a child actor. You know, recognize him from the 1984 McDonald's commercial for the Olympics. But all the 4 kids have sort of grown up into this sort of like very creative, very open to possibility adulthood. So 2 of them went to film school, Dylan and Clea. And then Ruby is in school still. Her last year is a film major. And then Ramona is not quite sure, but she is an actress at heart. So yeah, she might even just throw away the acting and become a teacher, because that's really what she loves, is with the kids. Her and Dylan both are amazing with kids. I think they're both very sensitive and very emotional beings. They know their emotions. They know other people's emotions. And they really love working with kids a lot, because I think it is the purest form of emotion. You know, kids are so innocent. They just let it all hang out.
You know, when you're starting to craft yourself, you're like, hey, I'm here, I'm single. I don't want to be here anymore in that kind of environment. You start to get to ask yourself questions. If I don't have what I want now, then who do I get to become to have what I want? And that means that I get to try, right? It means that I get to start studying and learning and growing into a human. There's this really amazing quote. I don't know who wrote it. It pops up in memes that says, the son once asked a father, "Father, how will I ever find the right woman?" And the father says, "Forget about finding the right woman, become the right man." And when you do that, the right women, the right kind of experience will show up. A lot of us just think, hey, when I find that right person, I'm going to change. Or it could be if I took this at work. When the right job opportunity comes to me, I'll learn the expertise, but it works backwards. You learn the expertise and then that comes to you. So crafting yourself and cultivating yourself first, it's all an internal journey. You're like, hey, who do I want to be? Not who do I think is going to be sexually attracted to me, but who am I? How do I want to show up in the world? And that takes a little bit of time, it takes a little bit of effort, and it takes a little bit of care. Now, as you start to feel better and stronger about you and who you are, and even your purpose in the world, the type of women in this scenario, if I'm attracted to women, is going to show up for me in a different way, a higher level. That thing that I've always craved shows up for me because I became that first.
I mean, there was a point where I was like deeply suicidal, and every second of every day for months was searing pain, just being alive. Like, ooh, it's like worst imaginable feeling. But then I got out of that. Like, I remember thinking, like, if I survive this, like if I'm out of this and if I'm able to enjoy things, I have like literally a created will to live again. Like, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Nothing has ever been even close to as scary as that. And so I put myself in a lot of those scenarios because I think I benefit from them, because that's where I stand out, is in those. And with dating as well, I feel like I'm again, like I've been ready for years. I know exactly what I want. Or I know now that I had to develop my own life first and find out who I was to I guess earn that portion of dating. And I don't know. I feel like I'm the most confident and attractive that I've ever been, but at the same time, like, I feel like I had more dating interactions when I was shy and quiet, and I had short hair, and I was different, because I think some girls would just find it less intimidating, easy to talk to. And, you know, nowadays, I'm like stuck in this bubble, of course, trying to move out, so it's hard to meet people, but I still do the dating apps and everything. I've only gotten like 5 or 6 matches or something on those. You know, I know like everyone has an awful time on them, but you definitely see a lot of people doing it and doing it right, I guess, and having success, and that feels disheartening at times. But I've also been trying really hard not to compare myself to other people in those scenarios, because I know I have a very different scenario and experience with this. And like, at this point, I just want to get on a date. It's been so long since I've even been on a date. Like, it's hard to get, you know, just to get a date happen out of the messages. It has to be like within the first 3 messages. But then I feel like if I'm too forward, then that's also nerve-wracking for them. And yeah, I mean, the last like 2 years of dating has been like a record bad. There's like, I'm still comparing with all my friends, like asking them, or like asking my sisters, like, do you guys like laugh away a guy if you're rejecting him? Like, has that ever happened? She's like, no, that's never happened. It's like, that's happened to me like 2 or 3 times now. But I'm just thinking of it as like, I'm so ironclad now, there's no way I can't handle it. I've had, in terms of all the like bad interactions, the amount of times someone has told me, and actually told me, that it's my birthmark is just too many. It's just too many, you know? And I've been stood up on plenty of dates, even like minutes before it starts. They'll just unmatch me, and then I'm at this restaurant, nothing to do. I've had people tell me I've made up the entire scenario. And that one hurts, because like that happened with one of my like first kisses, was with someone. And then later when we were closer and adult, I tried to get closer with her, but she just like, what are you talking about? That never happened. I don't even know you like that. I don't know. And for a while that like that's where they tell me I've made up the whole scenario. It happens like a lot more frequently do you think. And of course, the first thing I hear is like, oh shit, like, did I make up this scenario? Like, is that really what I'm doing? And it was a long time where I believed that's what I was doing. I was making it all up. I had that fantasy of what I thought it should look and feel like from when I was young. And it took me a while to realize like, no, I didn't make it up, because this and this and this happened. And we obviously said this and this. And and it was logically too much for them to handle at the time, and that's fine. But even otherwise, it's been normal, I guess.
When I had Dylan, he's my oldest, so he's firstborn, and he was, a long, bad labor. But at the very end, he ended up stuck and couldn't get out. So he was born by C-section. He had the cord wrapped around his neck twice. And all the doctors, when he came out, they pulled him out and they took him away. And like 3 of them gathered around. They were looking at him. And I was like over the curtain, like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? I was so freaking out because it had been such an awful, emotional, difficult day. And it was very late at night, almost midnight. And they said, oh, we think that he has, a bruise from the cord, around his neck, that it's created a bruise on his face. And I was like, well, is he okay? Like, is he breathing? Is he fine? And or just bring him over. And they did. They brought him over, and I was so worried. And I looked at him, and I said, oh, he's perfect. Because when you love your baby inside you, sight unseen, for so long, they're perfect, right? Such an amazing thing. But little did I know, like, just what a special child he was. From very early on, pure love emanated from him, from his eyes, pure acceptance. People would see him and go, oh my gosh, look at those eyes, because they looked right through you. They saw all of it. Like, even when he was like 6 months old, a year old, he had the ability to see people and exchange that for kindness, for like loving kindness in the moment. And when he was little, I went back to work after, I stayed home with him for a little bit. Then I went back to work to do another movie in animation, and I got a nanny for him. And that nanny kept telling me, Dylan is special. Dylan is special. And I'd say, I know he is. And she'd say, no, you don't understand. Dylan is special. And I got what she was saying, because although he's my only child, and I loved him because I'm his mother, I saw the thing that he had, the kindness he had towards all other children. Like, he never would fight with kids. He never grabbed a toy and said mine, like, ever. When we brought home Ruby, his little sister, he was about 22 months old, almost 2. And he had a little pacifier he called the Binky. I brought her home, and we were sitting on the couch, and she started crying, and he looked at her, and he took the Binky out of his mouth and he put it in hers, and he said, don't cry, baby. I mean, he loved her from minute 1, 0 jealousy. I mean, that's just who he was. And I knew then that while most people have their stuff, everybody's got their stuff, that his stuff would be on the outside, because his heart was so pure and good on the inside. And so I started telling him that as he got older, life might be a little harder for you because you have this birthmark that is what people see first, but that's all you have. You don't have, all these other things that other people have that they have to hide. His stuff is easy in a way. I don't know how much that ever got through, but we really always dealt with his birthmark very matter of fact. Everybody's got something, even some kind of birthmark. When kids would ask, oh, what's on your baby's face? I'd say, oh, it's a birthmark. Do you have one? And they'd be like, oh, yeah. Start undoing their pants to find that one on their thigh or something, or this one, but it wasn't an issue. It really wasn't an issue. And we never treated it like it was an issue. And I don't know if that was a mistake or not, but after Dylan for a very short amount of time, you don't even see his birthmark. It just goes away. So.
So with any kind of abnormal facial feature, people tend to hyperfocus on it, but it's only the person with that facial feature that tend to hyperfocus. And they tend to forget that it's part of a whole. That's part of your swagger. That's part of who you are. And some of the things that you can do around that is continue to build yourself, build your style, build the way that you speak, build your tonalities, build the education around that, and come in with presence. Because after a time, when somebody gets to know you, it's just part of who you are. It's part of having brown hair or brown eyes. It's just who you are. So it's less about focusing on that feature yourself and more about letting people get to know who you are, following all the different types of topics and steps and coaches and mentors, following those so that you can show up with that present. It just makes it part of who you are.
There's a fascinating phenomenon in human relationships. As we get to know someone, their flaws or their disabilities seem to fade into the background. When you spend time with someone, their laughter, their kindness, their intelligence, these become the things you focus on. The port wine stain on someone's face, the limp in their walk, or the way they stutter when nervous, all of these things become less noticeable once you begin to see the person behind them. The phenomenon is often referred to as mere exposure effect or familiarity principle. This psychological phenomenon suggests that people tend to develop preference for things, including people, that they are repeatedly exposed to over time. In the context of human relationships, as we become more familiar with someone, their perceived flaws or differences often become less significant, and we focus more on their positive qualities and the overall connection we share with them. But this doesn't happen overnight. And it's certainly not something that can be achieved through online dating.
So, in regard to Dylan and his scenario, what are your thoughts on him in the dating world?
Yeah, one of the things that you've shared through some of the videos is about how much Dylan takes his presence and even his birthmark serious, and it carries that forward. Right? Carries that like it's some kind of abnormal problem. And in reality, it's just a part of who he is. So everything else that Dylan does in his life, the way that he treats women, the way that he shows up at the gym, what he chooses to work, how he chooses to work, his purpose is all a piece of him. And so some of the times we get to forget about what we think is a problem because nobody else really thinks it's a problem. They just show up for you. And over time, that birthmark just becomes part of his charm and part of who he is.
Online, we're often reduced to images, profiles, and a few carefully chosen words. There's no space for nuances of human connection, for the way a smile can light up a room, or how someone's presence can make you feel at ease. In a world where first impressions are often made through a screen, we lose the opportunity to let familiarity work its magic. And it's that familiarity, that deeper connection, that makes us see the person, not the flaw.
One of the first things I realized was that it was actually really difficult for me to be mean to people, to sort of stand up for myself, or to, ask for money or ask for a favor for someone I didn't ask at all. And I was upset that other people didn't see the world that way. I was like, why does everyone only care about themselves when if we all just went to the left, it would all work so much better. And then I realized it only works if everyone does it. And so there was no point in doing it. And I was mad for a long time at everyone. I felt like everyone was letting me down almost, in a weird sense, because I was always really hard on myself. I had this image of what a good person should be. And I just realized I'm very tuned to understand how the people around me are feeling. I think I'm very good at reading body language and facial expressions, and I don't know, I feel like I'm very good with emotions, I would say.
over the last 13 years, I've been introduced to all kinds of experiences. Men that are trying to re-win their spouse after infidelity. Men that have self-conscious issues. Men that have never really connected with the inner child. Men that have never spent any time alone learning about themselves. And one of the things that tends to happen, unfortunately a lot, is suicide and suicidal thoughts. Like really deep, dark thoughts about who am I if I'm not loved? Who am I if that thing that I did just didn't get a swipe or like or heart? Or who am I if the girl that I was just dating doesn't want to date me anymore or call me? And this thing creates this like trigger, this like negative feedback loop in the body that just says, oh, well, this girl didn't like that. Therefore, the last 50 that didn't like that, that creates this negative feedback loop. It creates internal trauma. And unfortunately, in our culture, what's been happening is we've never really spent a lot of time cultivating like mental strength. Like if you can imagine just for a minute, any moment in time that you've ever had where thoughts sound like they're coming from you and they're dark and they're angry and they repeat themselves over and over and over again. Like you might have even laid in bed at night and you've heard just negative thought loops. You're not lovable, you'll never be loved, this, and this. And nobody really knows that that's actually a process that you can create mental strength to get those words and those unchecked thought processes to stop. Is really what happens when somebody gets super dark, when they're like, okay, life is over. It's because they can't or they haven't yet figured out how to get those thoughts to stop long enough. And they've been happening for weeks, months, and years. And it puts somebody into such a hopeless scenario because they believe what they hear. They're like, oh, it's my mind that's saying it. Or I heard my ex yelling at me in my own mind. And it comes down and then it goes into the heart and you're just like, I can never be loved. I can never find the person. Oh yeah, you're right. All of these negative experiences over and over and over again. It must be true. And you know what? It's not. There are practices and there are processes and even traditional therapy where you go into the meditative states and you learn that there are ways to get those thoughts to slow down and stop because they're not true. You're loved. You're lovable. You can be handsome and smart and charming. It's your choice. You can choose to be dark and you can choose to be depressed, or you can choose to find new processes. You can choose to find new daily activities and ways of eating and ways of thinking and ways of working out and drinking more water and all of the things, grounding, all of the things that help you become the person that you were really born to be. You were not born to be a depressed person. You were not born to be overweight and you're not born to be in the shadows. You were born to shine. You're a human being. You're a spiritual being in a physical body. Like, let that shine. And there's processes and there are people out there, their whole life is to train you how to do this. So it's not helpless if you choose it to be.
Really starting off, the first thing that I noticed was like, I didn't like myself. I didn't like the way I looked at all. And so I got very into bodybuilding for a while. Like there was a point where I was like 150 something pounds. And I'm like, probably like 135 now. I don't take it as seriously. But I got really big for a while because I needed that. I needed to prove to myself that I could look any way I wanted to. And I definitely did. Like, it changed my body. It, you know, like the way my shoulders sit, the way my back and my head is, it's different, you know? So I'd say I definitely physically changed a lot. And going through that was just like, it takes a lot of effort to, you know, I see why so many people are obsessed with beauty and attractiveness, because it's very rewarding to look good one day and to acknowledge when someone looks at you. But I really, really quickly like learned like, oh right, I don't care about them looking at me. Why would I? You know, when most of the time their opinions wouldn't be kind and beneficial, especially. I always had this thing in my mind where I thought if I did this, then I would get in a relationship. Because I still haven't been in a relationship. And there was a lot of just like, clearly I'm doing something wrong because it hasn't happened yet. It's on me. But the main thing I learned was that I was always looking for it, wanting it. Like everyone in the entire world knows that the second you stop looking, you find it for whatever reason. And if you try to stop looking to find it, that doesn't work either because you're still trying. And I didn't like that for a long time. Like, so if I try to get something I want, I can't have it. What kind of sick cosmic joke is that? Like, oh, sorry, you can't be happy because you want it. You have to not want it, and then I'll give it to you because you won't enjoy it as much. It's the way I thought it was. And I was mad at the world, and I thought it had like this pessimistic view, and it still kind of feels like that sometimes. But from the suicidal points, from learning to really, truly not care what anyone is thinking of me, it just made me realize I focused way too much on the other person that didn't exist rather than myself, and I needed to be maximizing me, figuring out don't wait to make $1 million till after you've found your person, don't wait to make yourself look the way you want until after you've done it. You do it all first and then you find them. And so recently it's been like I'm not on the dating apps, and it's just about networking and build that life for myself, build the self-sufficient unit that I know I want to be. I know I know exactly how I want to look or what I want to be doing. And then all you got to do is make sure you make a small step on that every day, and then you're a master at it one day.
In our culture, it's pretty interesting. We're kind of just thrown out to the wolves as men. We're saying, hey, be masculine, but we don't really know what that is. One of the best challenges that you can make for yourself, one of the best forms of study is chivalry and masculinity and things like, eye contact, things like body language. How do you hold yourself? How do you present yourself? How do you communicate with somebody else? There's a practice that's thousands and thousands of years old. We just don't have a lot of great teachers in our regular education format that's teaching us how to do this. So going out and picking up books to learn about how do I hold eye contact? Which eye do I look at? Do I bounce around or do I stay centered? Where do I hold my hands? How do I present myself? And when you do these things, you start to eliminate all of those subconscious cues that are happening in your head while you're talking to somebody, which is like, how am I standing? What am I doing? And when you start to formulate that and you start to educate yourself on these mannerisms, you remove all of those other subconscious cues so you can just be personable with somebody. The thing that leads is the heart and the conversation and the caring. And then all the other things come around it. Let all the other guys try to flash people. Just show up with your heart.
So today I wanted to channel my inner Dylan. So I put on my cat tarot shirt. I thought it was fitting and he'd get a kick out of it. And then I'm wearing my little matchmaker friendship bracelet. So what I did, I went ahead and looked at all of the avenues that would work for Dylan. I started with matchmakers, and that was tough because all of the matchmakers I spoke with really, I felt like it was too much effort to work with them. Like, even if they would charge money, they didn't feel really good about it. And they didn't feel like they'd have enough women that would say yes to the date. I don't think it was just because of his birthmark. I think age is a little tough. He's young, he's 23. Height's a little challenging in the United States. He's 5'5". So I think with all those things, they found it would just take a lot of effort. Not that it doesn't exist, just it would take a lot. So then I looked online. And, he had been online. I think he kind of shared with us that he had been online for a while. He didn't really have much success. He says that even with some of the women that he's contacted, they've canceled last minute. And he just said it was basically not great on his self-esteem. So I updated his profile. His profile came off very young. It came off like not a lot. People can't tell a lot about him. So I updated it. I put private tutor, self-employed, the university he went to, which was in London, his bio, a 3D artist. I like building things. I snowboard and bodybuild. I choose to be kind always. I love animals. I have a great family and friends. My birthmark is simply a part of me. Once you get to know me, you won't even notice it. Looking for my soulmate, but open to friends and new experiences. He said, swipe right if you are a nerdy girl who will make Skyrim memes with me, which I had no idea what that is. I had to Google it, but it was really cute. Another prompt we came up with was together we could make sushi. He worked as a sushi chef, and it says, and I can teach you, which is cute. My couple's dress up idea is, I see a Renaissance fair in our future. And then I included a photo of him and his 3 sisters, and a group of him at a Renaissance fair with friends. So, and then just really good, clear pictures, no sunglasses, anything like that. So his profile is really, really good. He is getting some interest, very little. And on top of that, a lot of the women he's not interested in too, right? Like they're not a great fit. So the next thing I did was speak to an expert. I wanted to talk to someone about marketing and algorithms to see what could be done online. So I spoke with a gentleman who is a marketing and algorithm expert, and in his own testing of his own dating profile, what he would do is go on and move all the photos around multiple times a day, make sure all the photos were super high quality as well. And then he would change up the prompts. And finally, after a few days of testing, he unlocked the code or broke the code, and he was flooded with matches. So he did get banned from the app. So I don't know if that's probably the best strategy, but I tried it. And ultimately, I just don't think that While I think that online can work for Dylan, it's just going to take time. He just has to stay consistent with it. Dylan is a prime example of an unforeseen greatness that is on these platforms. No one can see him. Where is he? Right? So I think the best thing for him to do is he's already worked on his self-acceptance, right? He is really grounded. He is well beyond his years. And I think that's really challenging for him. But beyond that, he just needs to continue on his journey, stepping into the man who he desires to become. And then the best thing he could do for himself is stay engaged in community, leaning on support from family and friends. Anyone, if you want to help Dylan on this journey, truly the best thing you could do is like and share this video. Plenty of people have met from YouTube, and love exists everywhere. And I'll say that people have been getting creative when matchmakers or dating services aren't really working for them. There are blind dating services, which I find for anyone who is looking for a deeper level of connection beyond surface, have a lot of great experiences with that platform. Beyond that, Instagram, TikTok, people are using their followers to create their own online dating profile and saying, hey, I'm single. Here's what I like. Like, DM me if you're interested. I know this has worked. So I think that one of the things I'm excited for about this experience in this docu-series is that this might be the place where he finds love. Like, this might be where it works for him. So, and I will take care of travel expenses and all of the introductions. If you can search me out, I will make the introduction. I would love to see this young man in a really wonderful relationship.